how can you change Jewish worship? These are the things that we have inherited from our great sages. Who are we, right, in this later generations to change these ideas? This is how we understand God. These are the words that our grandparents say. Who are we to change them? There's a very, very strong and for me, I think, very convincing argument not to change liturgy, and I'm someone who studies and teaches liturgy at the Hebrew Union College. I think there's a very strong cultural and theological argument not to change liturgy. We have to depend more upon our own thinking and less upon tradition. Tradition, right, of any kind, classical, reform, or orthodox, won't necessarily lead you to God. It has to be something that comes from your own personal engagement. A lot of the liturgical change in terms of how we understand God and in terms of actually integrating something like the foremothers as well as the forefathers into Jewish prayer, actually things that happened first in the Reconstructionist prayer books in the 1940s, in fact, and later were integrated into Reformed prayer books. This was a very radical notion, and still, for many, is a very radical notion. But Kaplan knew that in order for Judaism to survive in modernity, there must be liturgical change. Now, the conservative movement has done this much less than any of the other liberal denominations, but it certainly has done it, and it's why it needs it. It's one of the reasons why it needs its own prayer book, and they're also in the process of new editions of their prayer books as well. Modernity meant changing liturgy. We're jumping now to 1976, where a platform was analyzing the transition from the 1930s to the 1970s, what's happened to Reform Judaism, how now are they dealing with the notions of autonomy. Judaism emphasizes action rather than creed as the primary expression of a religious life, the means by which we strive to achieve universal justice and peace, right? We're into action, we're less interested in belief. Reform Judaism shares this emphasis on duty and obligation. Very interestingly enough, how does Reform Judaism understand duty and obligation? Not necessarily about observance of traditional mitzvot in their full array, but we do have a sense of duty and obligation when it comes to universal justice and peace, right? Our founders stressed that the Jews' ethical responsibilities, personal and social, are enjoined by God. Within each area of Jewish observance, Reform Jews are called upon to confront the claims of Jewish tradition, however differently perceived, and to exercise, this became famous, exercise their individual autonomy, choosing and creating on the basis of commitment and knowledge. Creating on the basis of commitment and knowledge. Commitment and knowledge meaning it's being done on a foundation of a sense of being part of committedness to the covenant, and maybe equally importantly, that you know what you're choosing and creating from amongst, that you have a sense of tradition. There should have been Beitei Midrash and kollels and study centers all over America springing up left and right, because you couldn't possibly live without knowledge. You certainly couldn't possibly live without a basic knowledge of Torah and Mishnah and some basic Jewish observant laws, right? But the truth is that for the 1.5 million American Reform Jews, a very small minority operated on this basis. Maybe the majority of rabbis and leaders might have operated on this basis, but a fairly small minority of other people did.